Stay ready.
You're always ready, huh? Uh, For all you listeners out there, we are going to call this meeting to order of the Water Management Committee. So with that, we'll just call to order, and I guess what we do is ask for public comment, if there's anybody on the phone. All you listeners? I take it there's no one there, Chris? All righty. All right, so we're right on to Stan
Okay,
for Indian Wells Groundwater Authority.
thank you. Let me see, my notes from the last meeting. GA activity, basically the last GA meeting was October 12th. The next GA meeting is November 9th. That's one day after the coming election and 5 days prior to our next board meeting on the 14th. In terms of management activity and concerns, first of all, about the imported water, the purchase of the 750 acre feet of Table A entitlement is going slower than anticipated. A new letter of intent or a letter modifying the original letter of intent has been sent to the seller. We're trying to get a copy of what was sent so we can see what we said. I may have additional information before the next board meeting, hopefully, and I'll report on it then. In the meantime, you should be aware that the GA continues looking for a loan agent. The pipeline alignment study, which is paid for by the $7.6 million state grant, is continuing. The Water District has had discussions with the GA's contractor, Provost and Pritchard, regarding the study, and I think we're solidly involved there. Moving on to the recycled water project, the original recycled water project study is essentially complete. The draft report is due out the end of this year. We should be seeing that report very soon, considering we're getting real close to the end of this year. Stetson has been authorized to prepare a water recycling Title 16 feasibility study for a Bureau of Reclamation grant. I have heard verbal comment that report should be done by the end of this year, although I have not seen any schedule associated with that. The Rose Valley subflow monitoring effort funded by the Navy COSO royalty funding is still scheduled to start the fall of winter of 2022. In other words, it's very soon. Next year's Navy COSO royalty program will not include funding for any GA efforts. I don't know what was chosen. But I do know, according to the Navy liaison person on the GA board, none of the GA projects were selected. Capital Core Group, the GA lobbyist, is discussing phase 2 Sigma grant opportunities with the GA staff. DWR expects $202 million to be available for the various GSAs. I think you might remember that the last grant, the GA applied all of the grant money to the implementation projects as opposed to any of it used for the GSP update, which they could have done.
Did you say 200?
$202 million, but that's spread over not just, I believe it's spread over not just the critically overdrafted GSAs, but a bunch of other GSAs as well. But the money can be used for either updating the GSP or for implementation projects, which is the same thing that the phase 1 was. But the GA, over my objection, chose to use all the money for the implementation of the imported water. Well, what that has resulted in is in next year's budget, we're borrowing money from the replenishment fee to go into the extraction fund so that we can pay for the GSP update. So I'm going to try to push for, as long as I'm on the GA anyway, for some of that money to be spent on the GSP update. I think it's important that we do that. The PAC, Policy Advisory Committee, provided their proposed implementation phase modifications on the communications and engagement plan to the GA. That is what was determined in the review of the GSP, is that it was a good communication and engagement plan, but it was specifically designed for the original GSP development, not for the update. And so it needed to be modified for the GSP update and implementation aspect of it. So let me see here. Okay. Okay, so now it's up to the GA to either accept and implement the modifications. Now, Ron, you'll be interested in knowing that it includes one of the provisions, proposed provisions, is to have an integrated schedule, budget, project description element, which of course is something that I was pushing early and often this year and got nowhere. So it'll be interesting to see what the GA does with that PAC proposal. In terms of financial activity, the long-awaited new financial system for the GA has yet to be implemented. I spoke with the general manager who indicated that the FY21 audit is consuming most of their available time. And they're going to get back on that new financial system as soon as that audit is complete. And there's a problem with the audit in that they've got new personnel at the accountant's office that they're dealing with, and so they're retraining, getting people up to speed. And then of course it's going to be a more intricate budget because, or audit, because we've got more funds, or more different kinds of funds. The GA adopted the FY23 budget at the last meeting. I was the only director that thought the 3-day review period was unacceptable. I voted against the passage of the budget. I didn't have time to review it, but nonetheless, I would have voted against it anyway, because my feeling is the public should have had more time to review it, in addition to the board having more time. There was very little discussion by other board members, essentially none, basically. However, I think there will be some future opportunities to go back and reconsider what's in the budget for two reasons. First of all, the new financial system will change a lot of things around. Now, we can revisit it. The other thing is if we can get the grant money to come in and be used for some of the GSP redevelopment or update, that will also be a major impact on the budget. Project activities and concerns, next topic. The fall well data collection has been completed, and apparently the process went smoothly. It's the first time now in 3 years. All the COVID problems have been eliminated apparently, and everything went smoothly, which is good. It should be simple, and it turns out I think this year it was. Stetson provided a top-level schedule for updating the aquifer model. Of course, this is obviously a critical. Let me see. Oh, yeah, this is a critical aspect of the 2025 GSP update. We aren't going to be able to update the GSP without having that model. And even though they presented a schedule, that schedule needs more detail as well as budget information. I think my personal feeling is that they underfunded that model development. I got a lot of experience in funding models, and it's not cheap. The last information I received regarding our ability to measure the change to groundwater and storage indicated that Stetson was still having some problems trying to measure that. And obviously, this measurement is a fundamental sigma criteria. According to the September Water Resources Management briefing that we got on September 14th, the draft water year 2022 annual report is due to be released to the board and to the TAC on November 15th. So that's coming right up. And of course, I was pushing for an early release so that there could be reviewed, updated, reviewed, and updated before it had to be sent out on, I think it's either April 1st or April 31st, one or the other. I believe that the Water District needs to get deeply involved in the annual report review this year. I think you might remember that I believe we had both Chuck Krieger as well as Tim Parker reviewing it last year for us. And I think we need to repeat that probably. And so what we need to do is get the board to go along with that. And last but not least, my last concern is as you probably recall, there are 19 corrective actions that have to be addressed by the 2025 GSP update. I've been trying to get a status on how we're coming with those 19 corrective actions with, quite frankly, little or no success. And of course, a lot of that goes back to the fact that we don't have a schedule. And you can't tell if you're on schedule if you don't have a schedule, is really the bottom line. So that's why it's going to be interesting to see how the GA responds to the PAC suggestion that we have a schedule. And that concludes my report. I'd be glad to take any comments, try to answer any questions you might have.
Some of these questions might just be to me getting an update. The Navy funding, what type of projects did the GA submit to them? Do you remember for funding that was all turned down? Do you remember what they were?
I think what happened is the GA put together a list 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And we did have the Rose Valley
Right.
wells. They are funded out of, I believe it's either last year or the year before last. And the funding always comes after, and we got delayed in that Rose Valley well drilling thing. But based upon, I think, what Don Zadiba was saying at one of our last meetings, is they haven't updated that list.
Okay.
And so they were still going back to the prior GA list of proposed topics. And
Might be the same list I saw back.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's what I'm assuming. And
So,
so,
okay. All right.
yeah, nothing rose to the top.
Okay, all right.
And my understanding is they have to spend that on some type of utility, risk reduction or that type of thing.
Okay.
And anything having to do with, water, electricity, gas, anything that will make them more sustainable.
Okay. The other question I had was in the money that was available for grant funding for implementation and update. Is that where our 7-point-something million came from out of that first round of that grant?
Yes, that was round one.
Okay, and that was, okay,
And that was, I believe that was only for critically overdrafted basins.
right, okay,
And basically what they did is split the money they had up into 20 or 21 of the critically overdrafted basins. And we were going to get $7.6 million, I'm pretty sure, no matter what we put into the,
right, yeah. they just
into
sort
the
of split.
proposal.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't convince people, unfortunately, that some of that money should go to the GSP update. So now we're stuck with basically borrowing money from the replenishment fee fund to get into the extraction fund so that we can pay for the work that needs to be done.
That was my other question about the extraction funds, and I know we've talked about this, Stan, is the extraction funds basically were put there to create the plan, right? And now they're using it to update the plan, and they may be even using it to update the model. I don't know where you're going with the model update. It could be very expensive, like you said. I assume you mean the Stetson model, the static model that they're gonna update,
It's actually the
or the DRI.
DRI
Okay.
model that is being transferred to the GA, and I'm not sure who's really in charge. I know, I think what's happening, and there is a committee that is working on it, that's trying to get agreement between the Navy, DRI, and the GA, which is Stetson,
that won't be
basically, on
cheap.
what needs to be changed.
Right.
But, $100,000 or $200,000 doesn't go a long ways.
No, but people, I think a lot of people don't understand there's two models. There's the static model that was created by Stetson. And the static model was the one that basically the water district was working in the state of California with the flyovers and everything else. That was another static model, and that's the one the GA didn't want to accept, so they had Stetson create their own. And then there's the working, I'll call it the working model. What's the word I'm looking for here, Renee? It's the, the flow model. It's a groundwater flow model where you put in and you tell you do all predictions with. So that's the DRI model. And you're right, that's
yes.
not going to be cheap. And so I guess my bottom line question is, have you been talking about this extraction fee? Are they going to redo the ordinance to start using it for other things besides what it was originally for?
No, as far as I know, it's for general administration, and it includes the one lawyer and all of the GSP work. The replenishment fee shouldn't be used for anything except imported water. Now, they've sort of, we're going to use it for recycled water,
Yeah,
as well.
All this money is getting muddled to me
Yeah,
because
well-
the extraction fee was originally to do the plan and get it approved.
Right.
And then all of a sudden now it's for administration, it's for updating the plan, it's for who knows what it's being used for.
Well, I think it always included some administration as well.
Well, that's why I think I asked Jim to look,
because you've
I asked
got
Jim
to
to look into that. Where are we with the extraction fee? Because it may be that we're at the end of the extraction fee and they need to pass another ordinance for administration and updates and whatever. I don't know. But I'm just concerned about that because you know as well as I do, the money's all muddled now. I can't tell what's going where hardly anymore.
It's not easy. Well, and there's a lot of people, once you pass or once you have a GSP, you no longer have to provide free water to anybody.
That's right.
And that needs to be revisited. I don't know who is paying and who isn't paying, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's
I
hard
know
to
we're
tell.
paying the big share. I know there are a few others that are paying small amounts.
Ratepayers are paying the bulk of it. Let's put it that
Oh,
way.
yeah.
There's no doubt about it. And so, as you know, we've talked about the extraction fee before, so I just encourage you to keep after about that. Definition, what really, by definition of what was laid out with the original report, and I read it again on the extraction fee, I didn't see anything in there beyond completing the plan.
Well,
Yeah.
well, I would think that the update would be a natural extension, except it turns out the extraction fee is the only fee that's authorized by Sigma.
That's right.
Everything else has to have an independent justification.
That's right, I agree. And I don't disagree that there needs to be an extraction fee, but I think they need to start redefining what it is and setting it at another level. In other words, if it's for administration, but I think you agree with that.
Yeah.
Do your best, Stan, I know you're not.
But I also think if the state, DWR, wants to help support the GSP update, we should let them.
Yeah. If we
We've
can come on that
already
grant,
got
yeah.
$7.6 million that we can do nothing with.
Yeah.
Except basically do some initial design of the imported water.
Now, am I to understand that is it Provost and Pritchard that's doing the initial
Yes, sir.
look at?
Yeah.
Are they going to come out with just generalities of pipeline location and potential hurdles and?
The Now that is, the alignment study is under contract to Provost and
Okay,
Pritchard.
that's the alignment
That's
study.
like a $450,000 effort.
Right.
Which is obviously just a small part of the $7.6 million. And they, I believe, are looking at multiple alignments and locations. And I'm reasonably sure that Chuck Krieger has been
Okay.
working with them, not so much of the alignment area, but how do we interface with them? You know, what are our needs? You know, if we're going to take that water, how are we going to take it? How do we process it? How do we get it into our system? That kind of
And
thing.
hopefully we'll have enough, because we're being told now by the city at their city council meeting that when they're done, we'll have the answers for the community and what it's going to cost us as a ratepayer. Now,
Just so you guys are
yeah.
aware, not just Chuck, but staff, we were all involved
Oh, okay.
in this. And actually, staff has had to provide
Oh, yeah.
quite a bit of information to Provost
Okay.
and Pritchard. They're looking not just at alignment, but also size of the pipeline too.
Yeah.
And areas where they could do their, a forebay or mixing or something like that, because we're not just gonna,
So are we going to get a picture of what this whole project looks like so someone could put a dollar,
I believe so,
a
yes.
preliminary engineering cost on the whole thing?
And then there's also environmental costs. It's
Right, environmental
gonna be
costs,
huge.
legal costs, everything else.
I don't think that's what Provost and Pritchard are. They're going to do a part of it.
Right.
Yeah.
But some of the other $7.6 million, I believe, were authorized to purchase right-of-ways with it and do some other stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, I don't want to see us get so deep into this thing when we find out we can't afford it. And that's what worries me. So
One of
that's
the first things we need to do is
What-
get a
bottom
real
line, and-
bottom line estimate, not just how much
Any
it's going to
good
cost per
engineering
acre
firm
foot,
would-
but
yeah.
what it costs our ratepayers.
I think, Renee, we call that preliminary engineering estimates. They're very preliminary. And I'm sure you've been asked to do them before. Hey, by the way, we want to do this project. Can you give me something in about,
Yes.
10 days?
Right.
And you got to put a
Very
pencil just based
conservative,
on
yeah.
experience. So I'm hoping that what they get from all this information is enough to put something down that is going to give them to the bottom line. And the reason, I'm going to keep pushing on this because obviously I created quite a stir. And I'm hoping that it comes out to what is it going to cost us?
Right.
Yeah.
Would be also nice to know when we're going to get that number.
Well, I'm hearing all kinds of things. I'm hearing
I-
2 months.
I
I'm hearing mid next year. I'm hearing,
I can't, I'm an engineer. I deal with schedules.
yes.
So do you. So
And it's
we've got to
critical.
keep reminding the GA.
Yeah, I mean, if you start spending money on right-of-ways and all kinds of things, and then you come out with a final number and they say, wow, we can't afford that. Now you wasted a whole lot of money.
Right.
Money could be used on something else.
Jason and I kind of remember them saying they had to have that to the GA by the end of the year. So,
Bottom line costs or
their report,
Oh, just a report.
the realignment study.
And until someone gets after it, Stetson can do it. I mean, I'd rather have someone else do it as an outside firm. But if Stetson has the engineering capability of sitting down and I mean, I can even tell you it's probably a 30-inch pipeline.
Oh, by the way, one of the things, my understanding is that what RGS is doing for us, that is this modified cost or not budget system. I believe it is compatible with Microsoft Project, which could serve as a good basis for a lot of things that would give us a lot of answers that would force the issue, quite frankly. So I'm hoping, that's why I'm kind of pushing Carol.
And you can see the bottom line I'm pushing for. What is it going to cost us?
Yes.
And I don't think that's asking too much. This soon in the game, we ought to be able to come up with something. And I know, Renee, you've done the same thing, and I have too in my career. I've come up with things. Of course, you always estimate on the high side because you don't want management either shutting it down or turning away from it. But it can be done. How many pumping stations? How much you get the electrical to? What's the electrical cost? And don't forget, this thing's going to be built, 15 years down the road at least? maybe more. What's going to be the cost?
You know,
And yeah.
yeah, when you start looking at procuring
Oh, yeah.
easements as well as getting EPA approvals and
The
everything.
sequel could be.
You don't know.
I don't want to go there, but
But we got to get started.
we got to get started on it. And so, you know, I know I raised a lot of feathers about this, but at least maybe someone is going to push for the answer for us. Because I think Director Boyd said it, it's due to our ratepayers to say in 5 or 6 years, this is what we expect is going to happen. You need to be prepared for it. So I appreciate, Stan. I know you got your hands full. You know, yeah, you're going to be on that board as long as you're on this board.
for 2 more months, I got my hands full.
Yeah, I don't know. You too.
Hey, I'm open to.
You know.
I'm flexible, Ron.
Yeah, I know. You're doing a good job over there, but too bad you're getting slam dunked all the time.
I shouldn't have all the fun.
I'm enjoying watching you, Stan. You know, but I surely appreciate it. I know there's a lot to do. And budgets especially just bother me. I mean, I don't know where money's going, how they're coming in. You know, a long time ago, we asked about something to handle the administration of the GA that wasn't the extraction fee because they need to plan for that, and that all got us shut down. So they're pulling money from all kinds of places, and we'll see. All right, I'm happy. Anybody on the line out there? No. I see a part.
Why is he
If that's
smiling?
green, I'll see with a number on it. I see. Okay.
Yes, the
Gotcha.
number shows how many are watching.
You guys have gotten so far ahead of me in technology, you know, in that short while.
Very nice.
Brackish water.
Okay, I have an update that Don provided me. It's not a whole lot different than what he provided last month, but I will go ahead and read it, especially Ron, for your sake, since it's your first meeting here for a while. So the Brackish Water Group hasn't met since January. There just hasn't been a whole lot going on. Tim Parker and Rambo have been working together, incorporating the reinterpretation of seismic data along with the SkyTem data. And that's been shared with Wade Major with Aqualogic. And Wade continues reviewing that to see if there are locational characteristics that might make for better, perhaps more feasible brackish project. Because the locations that we were looking at just didn't end up being feasible in those particular locations. Doesn't mean the project's not feasible, but those locations weren't feasible. So
Those were locations that required getting the brackish water from underneath the base somewhere. Was that?
yeah, like
issue.
drilling horizontally, and it didn't end up being as brackish as,
Yeah.
and just being able to do the study in that area, we just didn't find the wells that we needed to do it either. So Wade and Don did have a video meeting a couple weeks ago with Jennifer Polito with DWR to update her on the project status. The January quarterly report that was required by the grant had not been submitted, so she wanted to know what the status was. She requested that reports be submitted along with an invoice of any costs incurred during that time. So Wade is drafting the invoice and reports to submit to DWR. Work will then continue on the draft, revisions, and final feasibility study report. The completion deadline is March 30th of 2023.
Okay. I got no questions. You, Stan?
No, that's pretty much what
That's where we are all the time.
Yep.
the report has said for the last 2 or 3
Yeah,
months.
yeah.
They didn't, just except for the meeting with DWR, everything else is pretty much the same.
Yeah.
The one thing, if I remember correctly, when they looked at all the models and where the brackish water was and the quality of the brackish water, the best water was underneath the base somewhere, as I understand it. That's the location for the best possible water for brackish water
The
recovery.
most brackish and the biggest quantity,
The
yes.
biggest quantity that's available. Okay. Is anybody from Navy involved in this project at all? I don't think so, are they?
Not anymore, no.
They dropped out.
It sure behooved them to be on it because
They were at the beginning, they're not anymore.
Yeah.
Well, and they didn't want us to be drilling on Navy property.
Well, I realize that, but I'm saying that if they were to stay involved with the project, maybe at some point a light bulb might go off, or through pressure, political pressure, that they might actually put their own on the base themselves, like some bases have done.
Yeah.
Already put brackish water recovery to supply their need.
But you got to remember that this is a pilot, all right?
I remember.
And so therefore, my feeling is, the Navy hasn't said not hell no. If things were to look
Okay.
positive, my feeling is you could perhaps, don't want to put words in their
Yeah.
mouth, they might get interested again.
Yeah, because it's going to take some pressure, if you want, I won't call it pressure, working with people like Kevin McCarthy and
Yeah.
the contacts that Dave Janik has and such, and
Well-
say, hey, look, look what we're doing here.
well,
And here's the bases that have done this, and there's a number of them that have.
Right. Well, you got to have data
Yeah,
in order to apply pressure. And of course, that's, I think, the whole idea of having this pilot program.
yeah, once they, yeah.
Get started and show feasibility.
Right.
And then once you show feasibility, you get more people interested.
And the other question I have, and we can move on, is did I hear someone in the TAC say it, or was it the GA saying it, or maybe it was just Judy Decker, who was saying that, well, this makes no sense at all because that's not new water. Did I hear anything like that?
Several
'Cause
people have said
that's what I
that,
This
yes.
is not new water. This is still going
It's
to
still coming out of the aquifer.
come out of the aquifer.
And that is a factor.
Yeah.
It's not potable water, so.
Right.
But there's a possibility, in my mind, that we may still have to do something just to keep the brackish water from migrating into the sweet water.
Yeah,
And if that's the case,
that could,
then we have to have a process to manage it and process it.
right,
You know,
okay,
because no, I mean, whoever said it is absolutely right.
yeah.
But until, till the pilot study is done and we know what we can do or what are the options, those decisions are,
Project's not in
downstream.
danger of ending, is it? I mean, they're still talking, they're still working, they're still.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
that's because my concern. All right, thank you.
definitely still interest.
Anything else on that one? All right, let's move on to alternate water source. Who's got,
I've got that one too.
you got that one too?
Yes, I don't believe this has changed either. So, back at the January board workshop, the board authorized up to $200,000 to obtain and reprocess additional seismic data that was collected during the 80s within the El Paso subbasin, and then use that to update the hydrological conceptual model. So John Jansen with Collier Geophysical has provided a draft report on his interpretation of the seismic data. He provided that to Ramball for review and comment, and Ramball has completed their review, provided a few minor edits, and John intended to schedule a call with Tim Parker last week before finalizing the report. So maybe when Don gets back, he'll have an update on that, but the project still remains below the budgetary figures.
Okay. Because, exploring of sub-basin, as I see it, it's still part of our basin and it'll still.
Yeah, I don't see
Even
that as
though
any
we may
water
find
either.
another
Yeah.
source of water that's not being used, the only fear I've always thought about that basin, from what I know about it, is that when it does fill up, and it does tend to fill up, it just spills into the basin next, it just spills over in the other direction.
Mm-hmm.
So can we capture it before then? But I think it's a great idea just to see what's out there, because I don't think it's been accounted for in total available potable water.
Oh, yes. Yeah, as far as DWR is concerned, it's part of our basin.
Right.
Well, whatever you want to call it, is an area or sub-basin or whatever.
Yeah.
One comment that you should be aware of is that Tim Parker's been looking at funding sources.
Oh,
And he's spoken with DWR, and according to Tim, we're probably in line for getting TSS, Technical Support Services funding that would drill wells. And he's, and North, Tim has contacts within DWR and is talking about, funding. And according to Tim, whenever we come up with a good idea, that's the time to start processing a grant. So the next step is to refine all of this information that we've got that Tim Parker and Krieger are putting together. And at our next meeting, we always have an input from them.
right.
And we'll see how close we're getting to being able to actually identify areas that look like they're possibilities.
Isn't there a well, whatever happened with the well that was funded by DWR, the GA was going to do in the El Paso area? Is that still going in?
It's in,
Yeah.
functional, working.
Okay, oh, it is in already? It's
Yeah,
completed?
and it was one of those 3-layer
Right, yeah, that's right.
wells, and my understanding, it is part of the data that was taken for the fall collection. There's always 2 collections, one at the beginning of the water year, which is in October, and then one in the middle, which is like, I think,
But that
either
well,
late
is that,
March or April.
I
is
think
that
they do
well?
March
is
and
that
October.
Is that outside the area where we would determine, that we want to look?
That I don't know.
That's what
I'm not
wondering.
sure
Is it
exactly
up-
where that well was
Yeah, where
put.
the well is, yeah. Stan could probably get you the answer to
Yeah.
where that well is, exactly. I mean, if they've got it in there already, we ought to know where that well is.
I'm
the
sure.
GA the
Stuff-
GA
I know
is.
Don Decker was out there when they were drilling it.
Oh,
so.
I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Don would be happy to
Yeah,
you in on
give you to
all
fill us
that.
in on. I'm just wondering if that's close by to where,
And I don't honestly know whether or not we've ever seen the report, the final report from that.
there you go.
Because I thought there was supposed to be a
Yes.
report.
You think there would be?
I haven't seen anything. I would like to see, draw a well driller's log and water quality.
It could be nice
stuff
just
like
to
that.
see a report at the GA meeting saying the well is done, and here's what we discovered, or here's what we found, and here's what we're monitoring, and here's how we're using it. After all, is,
Well, and you'd think that the TAC would be deeply involved
yeah,
in that.
yeah.
Um,
Who's our representative on attack? Is still Tim? Who's on,
We have none.
we have none?
No,
Okay,
for various reasons.
okay, yeah. We can talk about,
We've decided to pull our person out.
okay, for a lot of reasons. All right. Nope, looks like no one's online yet. Boy, we're, geez, I thought we'd have callers lined up. I know. All right,
You
future.
haven't been hanging up on people, have you, Chris?
Yes, yeah. They're probably coming on and seeing I'm here dressed like this, and there's that guy that caused all the trouble. We're gonna hang up. They're hanging up. Yeah.
You get paid, Chris, whether there are people call in or not, so you can let them call in, Oh, okay, appreciate that.
All right, future agenda items. Anything anybody wants to add or?
No, sir, I'm good.
All right. Just add some viewers. All right, with that, I guess we'll adjourn the meeting at, what do I see up there?